Lesson 3.4, we're talking about multiplying integers. The objective is to understand conceptually how to multiply integers. When we're multiplying integers that have the same sign, your answer will always be positive. If your integers have different signs, your answer will always be negative. Okay, a cheer that I'm going to help teach you, or I'm going to teach you, that will help you to remember the multiplication rules is that a negative times a negative equals a positive. A negative times a negative equals a positive. Another thing that I think is very helpful, if you take a negative times a negative, you're going to get a positive. A negative times a positive, you're left with a negative. So I think this triangle is a good way to look at it and draw on your paper. If you struggle with remembering the multiplication rules, it's a great key to use to help you memorize that. Okay, here we have 3 times negative 5. Again, if you're somebody who's been struggling with the memorizing the rules, that if they're different, it's always going to be negative, but maybe you struggle with that. So you want to just draw this triangle off to the side. You draw negative, negative, and positive. And we have a negative and a positive, so we circle it right here. And so we know that what we're left with is a negative, so we know that our answer is going to be a negative. So we take 3 times negative 5, and we get negative 15. Okay, number 2, we have a negative 6 times a positive 8. So again, the signs are different, which means our answer is always going to be a negative, so it's a negative 48. Number 3, we have negative 11 times negative 9. So we have a negative times a negative, which equals a positive. So negative 11 times negative 9 is a positive 99. This is where it's so important that you know your multiplication facts. If that's something you've struggled on for the last few years, it's really going to make your life harder if you don't know your multiplication facts this year. Okay, number 4, we have negative 4 squared, which if you remember, this 2 right here is called an exponent, and you read that as negative 4 squared, and that means that you are just taking negative 4 times negative 4. And we know that a negative times a negative equals a positive. So negative 4 times negative 4 is a positive 16. Okay, number 5, we get a little trickier. We have negative 3 times negative 4 times negative 2. Remember, I didn't go over this in the earlier problems. Remember that these parentheses mean, and no space between, that means multiplication. There's a multiplication sign in there. But by the time we get to 7th grade, we know that and we don't have to write it anymore. So we write negative 3 times negative 4. A negative times a negative equals a positive. So we have negative 3 times negative 4 is a positive 12. And then we just bring down that negative 2. So then we have different signs, which means our answer is going to be negative. And 12 times negative 2 is going to be a negative 24. 6, we have a submersible is diving from the surface of the water at a rate of 90 feet per minute. What is the depth of the submersible after 7 minutes? So we know that distance equals rate times time. That's a formula if you haven't learned that yet. The distance equals rate times time. So they gave us the rate that it's moving, that's 90 feet per minute, and the time is 7 minutes. So we take 90, plug it in for the rate, and then we take the time, which is 7 minutes, plug that in for time, and 90 times 7 is 630 feet. You circle it. How's that for a short homework video? Hopefully that helped with multiplication. Multiplication is basically just memorizing the rules. I think that triangle, if you're not very good at memorizing things, as long as you memorize what that triangle should look like, you'll be good to go with multiplying negative numbers.